There are many different ideas on what is real, or for real, or what really happened. First we have what is real, period. Then we have how was the earth really created? And also we have what really happened in the past. There's lots of speculation on what really happened. I will go through these in order. It is ingrained in our head as a kid what is real and what is not. We think what we can hear, see, and touch is real. All we really hear, see, and touch, though, is what our brain tells us we do. You have a vein that runs from your eye and to the back of your brain, and your brain tells your eye what you're seeing. For instance, if I'm looking at a bird and my eyes are telling my brain that's a bird, if there's a bird right in front of me and my brain tells me that's an apron, I will think that's an apron. Okay, and all other senses work in the same fashion. If you were just a brain sitting in a jar, nothing else, and you were connected to a computer that was telling your brain you were a businessman going through some papers in an office, you would not be able to realize that these things were not true. You would actually think you were a business person in an office. And you would think you were there. So, you still don't believe me? Well, think about dreams. We may lay down and dream that we have went out and got in an airplane and flew that plane, or took a walk through the park. But in actuality, we have not taken one step away from the bed. We have lots of theories about how we are created and what is real. The first widespread theory is that we are created by God. God created Adam and Eve, and they were the first humans. But were there people before Adam and Eve? We'll get into that later. Since before the time of the 1800s, this was the only acceptable way of how humans were created. The second most widespread theory is that we came from apes. Another theory that's very widespread, that I will get into more later, is that we came from aliens. Lots of people suggest that we were put on this earth as already supremely advanced by aliens. A PhD, Ellis Silver, believes this, that we are not suited enough to be from Earth, not suited for Earth enough to be from Earth. He suggests that bad backs prove that we are from a planet with much less gravitational pull. He points out the way we are not meant to have extreme exposure to the sun without severe sunburn. How can you live millions of years on Earth and evolve from here when you can't even take the sun? And he points out how we are always ill, as if we're not meant for this planet, and show a great dislike for the naturalist of earthly foods. He believes that we may have been shot to this planet, shot from another planet by a comet or meteorite, and landed on this planet as tiny organisms on that meteorite, and then grew into the species that we are. Are we from the sea? This is another theory. What about our slightly webbed hands and feet? You ever think about that? There was a huge conference in London where experts came to discuss this. It's a very widespread theory. They point out that apes do not like water, where they say we came from, while a baby exposed to water will automatically close its larynx and begin to paddle in the water. Only months before we are born, we have gills, gill slits, tails, and totally webbed hands. So, we've talked about what actually is reality and how we were created, now, for a second, let's say that what all religions on earth say are true. That there were about these great beings on earth and great people. Almost every great being in religion came down from the sky on a fiery chariot. Well, a spaceship has fire coming out the back of it. Could they have mistaken that for an alien? Is it possible that an advanced civilization inhabited Earth thousands of years ago? Some people believe this by these stories of great beings and beings that could fly. We can fly now. We have rocket packs. We have things that can hover. Perhaps an advanced civilization or aliens came to Earth that could fly and stuff like that. Since the beginning of civilization, man has credited its origins to visitors from the stars, from the skies. They never once stopped to think that these may be aliens. They found a rock at the bottom of Lake Michigan, a solid granite rocks with a mastodon carved on it, or what we call a woolly mammoth. These stones were aligned in the shape of a Stonehenge. They were grabbed and dragged and placed in a certain alignment, which means that they must have been made 12,000 years ago when the lake was dry. 12,000 years ago, we didn't have power tools. The carvings in the granite rock were not possible to be carved by hand. They must have been carved by a power tool. Or they couldn't have been carved by any technology we had 12,000 years ago. So why are they there? Did an advanced civilization put them there? In the Bible, let's assume that what they say is true. Adam and Eve had a son, and the Bible says that son went to marry a girl and joined a part of a thriving community. Well, where did this thriving community come from? If there was only Adam and Eve and his sons and his children, where did this community come from? And Cain, when Cain slew Abel, he left and went out on his own. And the Bible says he found a city with beings in it, a large city. So who are these people who were before Adam and Eve? We call these, when you connect other religions' texts of different religions, they speak of beings who dwelled upon the earth before Adam and Eve. What do you call these people before Adam and Eve? We call these pre-Adamites. They are legends, supposedly people who lived hundreds of years and had extremely advanced technology. Sounds like aliens to me, but let's assume aliens came here hundreds of thousands of years ago and then left. Well, where are all the structures they built? All the metal buildings, the skyscrapers like we have now? Well, simple explanation. Experts say that after 50 years, experts in corrosion, after 50 years, metal skyscrapers, if a civilization was just left all of a sudden, completely abandoned, would begin to crumble to the earth. After 1,000 years, they would be completely consumed by the soil and grass would start to grow over where the skyscrapers were. Experts say that, and so why is it the only ancient artifacts we find are made of stone? These stone statues and stuff of great people, like we have today in Russia. You know, maybe the statue of Stalin or statues of Rocky in Philadelphia. Well, the experts say the only things that would survive eventually would be natural stone-made monuments or materials. They're the only things that last forever. Here's another thing. There are 25,000 miles of roadway built in South America, supposedly all built by the Incas. Along a particular stretch, and all over the place there are tons of great structures. We think they built them. They're said to be thousands of years older than the Incas. But you ask the people who lived there, who built these? They say, we didn't build these. They say, they were already here when we came here. They were the homes of the gods. Is it possible that aliens had a civilization before they even got there and then left? Instead of thinking these are aliens, we call these myths. There is a new structure from the end of the last ice age, it has been dated, that archaeologists have unearthed. This structure involved moving huge stones and pillars, some up to 50 tons, from miles away, and carving them beautifully. The only problem is that in this time, according to mainstream science, we were still sitting in caves munching on bananas. So what gives? We may never know. Is it possible that there was a highly civilized race or aliens on Earth in the past, living alongside man or before? We may never know what the reality or the truth really is.